This episode of Nutshell Brainery is brought to you by The Courage to Succeed, Discover and Achieve What Matters Most, and Tell Everything Else to Take a Hike by Lon Schiffbauer. Now available at Amazon.
Let's say that you have a meeting scheduled with someone tomorrow, but you can't make it. Maybe you're having car troubles. Maybe you forgot that you had promised to take your grandfather to see the doctor. Maybe your dog suddenly developed the powers of speech and wants to renegotiate the walking schedule. The point is, you have a meeting tomorrow, but you're not going to be able to make it, so you decide to write an email. Now I know, an email may not be the right channel to use in a situation like this, but we'll talk about that in a future video. So what do you say? How do you tell this person that you're not going to be able to make the meeting tomorrow? Well, of course, it depends on who you're writing this email to, who you were planning to meet with. If the meeting was with your best friend of 15 years, then the email might go something like this. Hey, Dorkwad. Something came up, so I can't meet tomorrow. We'll talk this weekend. See ya. P.S. I'm prettier than you. Smiley face. There, that ought to do the trick. But what if the meeting was a job interview and you're writing the hiring manager? Calling them a dorkwad and offering a critique of their physical appearance may not get you the response you're looking for. But if the core message and desired outcome is the same, canceling the meeting and rescheduling it, why wouldn't the same message work equally well for both your best friend and the hiring manager? It all comes down to understanding your audience. Let's say that you need a day off work next week on really short notice. In our last video, we learned that every time we communicate, we do so with the intent of affecting our environment by influencing those around us for a specific purpose. Now, in this particular instance, you need a day off work next week. And since you don't currently have that day scheduled off, you need to affect your environment, which is to say, talk to your boss and get the day off. But how are you going to influence your boss to get this day off? It all depends on what makes this person tick. In our last video, we talked about the flow of crafting an effective communication. The first part of this flow says the intent or purpose of our communication leads us to the correct audience. I mean, why even open your mouth unless you have some reason for doing so? But once you have a reason for communicating, you then need to decide who best to approach to get what you need. Kids know this principle and practice it like uber stealth ninjas. Whenever they want something, they go to the parent they know is most likely to acquiesce and give in to what they want. In this way, kids choose their audience very carefully, which parent to approach to ask for whatever they want. So what goes into understanding our audience? Well, as it turns out, quite a bit. So we're going to cover this in 2 videos. In this video, we're going to look at demographics, psychographics, and stakeholders. First, let's take a look at demographics. These are things like age, race, gender, ethnicity, religion, nationality, things like that. And for the most part, demographics are relatively easy to observe and measure, which means we often tend to fall back on demographics when trying to determine how best to approach our audience. But the thing is, demographics don't really tell us much when it comes to understanding how our audience thinks, feels, or behaves. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, it's pretty easy for you to observe that I'm an old white American male. Now, this alone doesn't tell you too much about my attitudes and behaviors, those values that drive who I am, but they can at least get you pointed in the right direction. Like many others in my generation, I value the importance of education. I was a latchkey kid, so I'm pretty independent. I prefer working alone. I'm pretty pragmatic. And like many others in my generation, I'm extremely skeptical of power, and I'm about as cynical as they come. Now, all of these values generally hold true for an old white American male, so at least in this way, demographics have guided us fairly well. But if we're not careful, and this is really important, If we're not careful, demographics are the beginning of a slippery slope to stereotyping. Just because something generally holds true doesn't mean it always holds true or that no further investigation is necessary. For example, based on my demographics, you probably wouldn't conclude that I like tango and Middle Eastern music, or that I love comic books. See my cool Batman ring? Or that I prefer female doctors to male doctors. Or that I own about 4 dozen bags. That's right, man purses. And I'm always looking for the next one. This is my daily bag. This is my teaching bag. This is my writing bag. This is my computer bag. As you can see, I like bags. Do I ever? The point is, if we're really going to understand our audience, we need to dig deeper than what is just easily observable. We need to get into what really drives their behavior. This brings us to psychographics. Well, no, not that kind of psychographic. Psychographics measure our attitudes, beliefs, and values, those things that really drive our behavior and define how we see ourselves in relation to the world and those in it. Psychographics help us understand who someone is, how they think and feel, and why they do the sort of things they do. For example, what do you see when you look at this picture? Some might see a proud moment in American history when a populist movement took back power from an elitist ruling class. Others may see the end of democracy and the beginning of totalitarian rule, one defined by nationalistic bigotry and Orwellian alternative facts. Still others may be more or less ambivalent to what they're seeing in this picture and not feel anything in particular one way or the other. How you see this picture is driven by your psychographics. Now the thing is, psychographics are much more valuable to us when we're trying to understand our audience, but they're much more difficult to measure and quantify. This is why it's so tempting to use demographics as sort of a back door to psychographics. And that's all well and good. You can start with demographics, but beware of stereotyping. Don't let demographics be the end of the conversation. Finally, we need to think about our stakeholders. So here's the deal. We want to change our environment. That's why we're communicating. Stakeholders aren't part of our immediate target audience, those whom we need to influence to get what we need, but they will be affected if we're successful in influencing our environment. They share the same environment we do, so when we affect the environment, we affect their environment. So why do we care? Well, because they can influence the environment right back, and maybe not in a way that we really want. Let me show you what I mean. Let's go back to our example where we need that day off next week. If we're successful in getting the day scheduled off, this could very well mean double the workload for our coworker. Now, our coworker isn't in a position to grant us the day off, so they're not part of our immediate target audience. However, we need to take their needs into account as well. If we double their workload without giving them a heads up, they can get pretty perturbed. They can then influence our boss right back and end any future opportunity we have of scheduling any time off we need on short notice. It can also create ill will in the environment, in our workplace, and our boss is not going to appreciate that. So what do? Well, maybe we first need to approach our coworker and let them know that we are going to ask for the day off. Maybe explain why we need the day off, that talking dog thing or whatever. And basically give them a heads up so that they can adjust their schedule however they need to accommodate our day off. This way, when you go to your boss and ask for the day off, you can assure them that you've covered all the bases and that your coworker has your back. Trust me, your boss will appreciate that you've done the legwork to make sure that everything in the office is simpatico. So while our stakeholder is not our primary audience, they can influence our primary audience just as well as we do, so we need to make sure that we're aligned. And so there we are. Consider your demographics, psychographics, and the stakeholders that share your environment, and you're halfway to understanding your audience. Next time when we get together, we'll conclude our discussion of audience and talk about context. I hope you'll join me. This episode of Nutshell Brainery was written and produced by Lon Schiffbauer. Our theme music was composed by Scott Holmes. You can learn more about Scott's music by visiting freemusicarchive.org/music/Scott_Holmes/.